Hello and welcome to the channel. Today what we're going to talk about is a presentation on bots. This was a presentation that I recently gave at the Saskatchewan Microsoft 365 Day, and I broke this session up into two parts, and this is part two. Look for part one on my YouTube channel, but part two is focused on robotic process automation bots. So go ahead, check this out. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll catch you soon with another video. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I think we can probably get started here. My name's Kent Weir. I'm a Principal Program Manager lead at Microsoft. I'm part of the PowerCat team. And so the CAT stands for Customer Advisory Team, and we typically work with strategic customers on adopting emerging technology, including what we're going to see here today. So we're going to talk about conversational chatbots using Power Virtual Agents, and then also Robotic Process Automation, RPA. So I'm happy to participate in this event. I'm actually from Saskatchewan. I grew up in Regina. I went to U of R, and certainly when the call for speaker sessions came out, I was looking forward to this being in person, but obviously there's other circumstances going on right now. So be it. Happy to be here remotely. I am dialing in here from Calgary, Alberta. Before we dive deeper into the content, I wanted to let you know about an emerging community found at serverlessnotes.com. This is a community resource that covers best practices, tips, and latest announcements built on contributions by technology enthusiasts from around the globe. On serverlessnotes.com, you'll find content related to Power Automate, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Service Bus, Azure Functions, and much, much more. Serverlessnotes.com is brought to you by Serverless 360, a portal that is focused on operations and support for Microsoft Azure serverless resources. Now, this is a complementary tool to the Azure portal, and it helps organizations in supporting Azure serverless applications. You can find out more about Serverless 360 at serverless360.com. So here's a bit of an agenda that we're going to go through today. We're going to talk about Power Virtual Agents, and we're going to do so in the context of Microsoft Teams. Obviously, with this being an M365 event, wanted to really emphasize some of the new capabilities that are available as part of the recent Project Oakdale release. So we're going to focus on Oakdale and virtual agents as part of the first part of this presentation. Then on the second part, we're also going to talk about something brand new. And this is where it comes to RPA. So at Ignite, just I guess what was that, last week, we announced the introduction of Power Automate Desktop. And so we're going to talk all about Power Automate Desktop and run you through a demo from there. I do have some good call to action, so do hang out for that, just in terms of some material in order to take what you've learned today and actually apply it to some of your use cases as well. As we do go through this content, feel free to add questions into the chat. I know that we've got Mohammed who's standing by and moderating this. Certainly when we transition from Power Virtual Agents to Power Automate Desktop, we'll certainly try to take some questions at that point and then naturally cover the RPA questions at the end. So feel free to go ahead and add to the chat, and certainly want to thank you all for spending your time with me here today. So shifting gears a little bit, and thanks for all of the questions. Those have been great. So shifting gears a little bit, we've talked about conversational chatbots. Now we're going to talk about robotic process automation bots. Now sometimes, depending upon the vendor, these terms are used interchangeably, which can be frustrating. So that's why I always try to qualify a chatbot as a chatbot and then an RPA bot as an RPA bot. Now something I do want to talk about is, I mentioned this in the intro, but Power Automate includes robotic process automation capabilities. Now, this did ship in general availability in April. We had an offering called UI Flows. It was our first entrance into RPA. Now, what has happened since April is that Microsoft acquired Softomotive in May of this past year, this spring, and they have been in the RPA game for about 15 years or so. They have a tool, or had a tool, called Win Automation, which was their desktop automation platform, and it's there for RPA. So now what has happened is Microsoft's acquired this company. those people have joined the organization. They've joined Microsoft: engineers, customer success managers, sales folks, professional services, etc., support, content, training. All of those types of roles have joined Microsoft. And now what's happened with Power Automate Desktop is we've introduced this new capability into Power Automate. And at Ignite, just last week, we introduced Power Automate Desktop in public preview, which is the evolution of Win Automation, but being integrated into the Power Platform, which is a huge undertaking. If you think about what was accomplished in the last 3 months, it is amazing. I'm not just saying that because I work for Microsoft. It truly is. And so now some of the benefits are you've got this integrated experience. All of your automation scripts get persisted to the cloud. We've got rich support for inputs and outputs, so you can take an API flow and then be able to call into an RPA or a UI automation. And really that's where sort of these two worlds collide, right? And this is where we feel that we've got a very interesting solution because of our heritage in Power Automate and those API flows using connectors. Now a rich desktop experience in Power Automate Desktop, and now the ability to bring those two worlds together. And this is one of the simplest slides in the whole presentation, but this is probably one of the most meaningful slides in the whole presentation. We do have on the right-hand side modern systems with APIs. And that's API flows, right? That's the Power Automate that you know and have been using the last 3-4 years, right? So you can connect to all of those M365 services like I did in the demo. You can connect to ServiceNow and Salesforce and Adobe Sign and all of those other third-party services as well. And when you have an API, you should use an API. Some vendors want you to do everything with RPA and UI automation, but if you have an API, use it. It's the most reliable and performant way to automate those systems. But we fully realize that not every system is going to have APIs. It could be a legacy application, like a legacy ERP. It could be an old intranet app. And you either sort of don't want to invest the time and money to go build those interfaces, or you just can't because they belong to someone else. And that's when it makes sense to automate through the front end and then be able to bring both of those worlds together and use the right tool for the job. And I think that's another just key phrase I would say is use the right tool for the job. Now, as part of Power Automate Desktop, we provide a rich experience around that where we can go ahead and construct these automations. And then once they're saved, they get persisted to the cloud, and then we can go ahead and call them from our API flows. And I'll show you this in a demo. I feel like that's just more valuable than going through some of these slides. So I'm just going to jump ahead to the demo here. So the use case I'm going to show you today is an end-to-end use case that really highlights our key strengths. We've got a contractor that has finished a project and wants to submit an invoice. They go ahead, they send that invoice in through email. We take the attachment, and this is where we're using connectors, pull the attachment out, send it over to AI Builder. Have AI Builder use the form processing capabilities to extract key information from that document, and then we can use that to route to Microsoft Teams for approval. Provided the project owner agrees with what's been submitted, they can approve that invoice, and then we're going to go ahead and drive a legacy Win32 desktop application, which happens to be this one here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to drive this screen and enter the invoice information into this screen, and we're going to do that using RPA. We're also going to take advantage of some rich capabilities in Power Automate Desktop around Excel, where we can go ahead and add a new row into an Excel spreadsheet. And then once we finish processing the invoice, we're going to go ahead and send an email back to the contractor indicating that their invoice has been processed. Now, just to highlight that concept around API flows and UI flows, that's what this diagram is doing. We've got cloud-based orchestration in the cloud. We're going to start in the cloud. We're always going to start in the cloud. We're going to use all of the available triggers that are available to us. In this case, it's going to be email. As I mentioned, we're going to use AI Builder and Teams, and we're going to use the APIs and connectors to do that. Then what we're going to do, because we need to drive that legacy application that has no APIs, we're going to actually transition state over to a local computer. In this case, it'll be my laptop. We're going to use the on-premises data gateway in order to broker that communication from the cloud to my local desktop. And then we're going to interoperate with Contoso invoicing app and Excel. When we're done, we'll basically return state back up to the cloud and then send that email in and be able to respond back to our contractor. Now let's go over to Outlook, and we are going to send this invoice in. I will show it to you once I click send, as we have a couple minutes while the email gets parsed. So let's go ahead, let's hit send here. And let's now take a look at the invoice. So not the most complicated invoice, but it proves the point, or it highlights the capabilities. As part of this invoice, there's specific details that we need in order to go ahead and approve that invoice. So the bill to, the contact, the balance, the total due, and then the date. And so we'll take these PDFs or JPEGs in, scrape that information using the connector. We then have access to those individual attributes, which we can then use in order to route for approval. Now I'm just going to flip browsers here, and we're going to go into our Power Automate flow. Now this is essentially what's happening, right? We've got our email trigger. We're going to be able to retrieve these emails and basically send them off to AI Builder. And then what we're going to do is send them over to Microsoft Teams and an adaptive card. And provided that we're good with that, we'll approve that invoice or that message inside of the adaptive card. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is call our UI flow. And so this is a UI flow that was created in our PAD, or Power Automate desktop tool. And then what we can go ahead and do is pass it in those inputs to it. And then we're going to see this, application open on our screen. And then once we're done, we'll go ahead and close the loop and send an email back and include an output from our PAD script. Let's just head over to Teams here, and we can see here at 10:47, so a minute ago, our adaptive card came in. We've got the details, the information from the invoice, from that PDF that was sent in, and now we can just go ahead and click on approve and click on confirm. Now just give it a moment here, and we should see that Contoso app launch, and then you're going to see mouse move, keystrokes being made, and we're going to go ahead and drive that application itself. I'm just going to here we go. So this is the application. I'm drinking coffee. Our invoice has been saved in the app. And then behind the scenes, we've seen Excel. And what we have is a new row that has been added into our Excel worksheet. Now, you could say we could use a connector for Excel. In this case, you probably could. However, there's some rich capabilities within Power Automate Desktop and Excel that really gives you good capabilities. The ability to detect when there's a new row, or when there's a free row or a free column, the ability to call macros, just some rich capabilities by using the underlying Excel SDK. So if we head back over to our flow, naturally we can go ahead and see our runtime here. And so it ran successfully, so that's good news. And let's, we can see that we had an output of 1124, and then we sent our email back saying for invoice 1124, here's the value. And if we head over to our email, we see that 1124 has been approved. So that's essentially that end-to-end process. Now, how do I go ahead and build something like that? So this is Power Automate Desktop. This is what we call the console. Do note that you are plugged into an environment. So much like when you're in Power Automate Flow, you're in an environment, you save a flow, it goes into that environment. Same principle applies here. That's part of the new integration that we've recently introduced. Now, that's the console. Here's essentially our design surface. These are all of those actions we talked about. So, for example, Excel. We can pull this up, and you can kind of think of this almost like connectors in Power Automate Flow, right? Where we've got these reusable functions that we can drag and drop onto our screen. So for example, here we can launch Excel. We can activate a cell. We can delete an Excel worksheet. We can delete a row, insert a row. And so these are some of those capabilities that just don't exist inside of the connector for Excel itself. So those are actions that we can use kind of like connectors. But we also have these recording experiences. And in this case, what we can do is click on Desktop Recorder. And then we're going to bring up our app. And then when I click this Start Recording button, it's going to record things that I'm going to do on screen. So I can go ahead and click on Recording. Now, as part of our process, perhaps the first thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and click on Invoices. And you can see when I'm going over these different objects, they turn red. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on Invoices, right? Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on New. And then what I do is I hard code text, right? So I'm just going to say this is Contoso. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on Contact. Then I'm going to provide a value. And then I'm going to click on the combo box and say Invoiced. And then I can click Save. And you can see on the left-hand side, all of these steps are being recorded for me. Now what I can do, I need to extract this value. I can right mouse click and then say Get Text. And then when I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Finish. And then if I head back into my Power Automate desktop UI flow, I see all of these values, right? So naturally, these are hard-coded, right? This is great for testing. I can go and run this, and it's going to drive that application again. That's cool. But to make this more useful and more extensible, I can go ahead and create an input. And in this case, I'm going to say my variable is going to be a contact. And I will provide sample data, and I can just do like John Doe at Contoso.com. Good enough. And then here we'll call this contact. And then I can go ahead and click on create. Oh, I can go ahead and click on create. So now I've got a contact input. What I would do is I'd go into here, I'd double click on it. I would get rid of like this hard-coded text. And then I can go ahead and choose to use my variable, my input. And so then what happens is when I save this and I go back into my API flows and I choose this flow to run, this will now show up as an input as part of that dynamic content, which is pretty awesome, right? And so this is where you would go ahead and continue to build out your flow. You can do more inputs, you can do outputs, and then you can also create subflows, which are kind of like child flows inside of API flows, where you can go ahead and then build these reusable packages or modules that you can then assemble and call from your core orchestration. Now, we talked about desktop recording today. We also have support for web recording. So if you need to drive web applications using a very similar approach, you can go ahead and use those techniques. Now, I believe there's some questions going on in the chat. So I will just put this up and then I'll take some questions here in the last few minutes. So just in terms of call to action, the scenario I just demoed you through or walked you through very quickly is available as part of our RPA in a day training. This is free training. We will have some partners that deliver this, and it's now obviously all remote, but generally we try to include them at like MTCs, Microsoft Technology Centers, or local offices. But in the meantime, you can download it. It is step by step. It's about 8 hours worth of content to go through, and go ahead and give that a try. You can sign up for a trial. What I've showed you today all works in a trial. You don't need to put out any money to do that. It's an RPA attended trial. That's good to let you kick the tires on this. The next thing I want to shout out is just build a bot in Teams. Like, everyone should now have a bot. Even I know there was a screenshot of someone who's blocked from creating bots, but everyone should have a bot now. Like, there's no reason not to have a bot. I understand with the licensing, sometimes that creates barriers for people to, basically get that set up, but now it's included in Teams. Improve your productivity for your project, your department, or even your organization. And when you build something in Teams, let me know. Tweet me at Weirzy, tag me on LinkedIn, and we would love to see what you come up with. Even yesterday, we were meeting with the product group and talking about use cases and scenarios inside of Teams. And so they are all about building out templates that will be useful for customers. And you can go ahead and basically, if you want to submit ideas, we're definitely looking for ideas that we can build templates on that'll provide real value for customers and organizations. And then lastly, my YouTube channel. If you like this style of content, what I've gone through today, I've got lots of it on the channel itself. Apparently I've got a copy paste issue here too, but go ahead and subscribe, and you'll find a lot of information around Power Automate, RPA, and then also Power Virtual Agents. So I know I went through a ton of information quite quickly, but I do appreciate you folks tuning in. I'll now take a look at some of the questions here and see what we can get through in the next 4 minutes or so. Okay, so the first question, does web still need Selenium extension? Great question. Now, the Selenium support was introduced back in April as part of our initial GA. And as part of that experience, we had this sort of like dual mode of doing recordings. We had our own desktop technology where we had built that from the ground up to do desktop recording. And then we leveraged Selenium, an open source, essentially test automation framework to help us with the web UI. Now, those are still supported. I want to make sure that's very clear. If people have built assets with that, it is still supported. However, moving forward, you are best off using Power Automate Desktop. We're not using Selenium inside of that technology. We're leveraging Softomotive's technology that they've had in for quite some time. And as a result, I feel like it's more robust. I think both have sort of the pros and cons, but I feel like the Power Automate Desktop stuff is a little easier to use. And I feel like there's better support for table extraction. And that, as a pretty popular use case, is table extraction. So I would go ahead and really, anything moving forward, go use Power Automate Desktop. The other stuff is supported, so I don't want to scare anybody, but in terms of investments, the investments will be made in Power Automate Desktop. They won't be made in Selenium. Jonathan, I work for a midstream nonprofit, academic backgrounds. It's been tough rolling out Power Automate. Convince the org to pilot Power Apps, Power Virtual Agents due to cost. Do you have any suggestions on selling paid tools like Power Virtual Agents and AI Builder when a place doesn't have a culture of using these tools? So yeah, great question just around like adoption. There is a session that was at Ignite last year that myself, when I didn't work at Microsoft, and John Levesque put on, and it was called Bottom Up Innovation. And feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I can definitely get you that content. We really looked at it as like getting the company in a place where they will like want to test and learn, and using this bottom-up innovation approach, we really focused on value, right? So we would go through training sessions, but then we would ask the people that go to training to identify some use cases that would provide some business benefit, and try to quantify the business benefit, and then try to create some milestones that they can go and hit those milestones on within a short period of time. And like at that point, like it should become abundantly clear that this stuff is real, and that not only are you bringing more people to the party per se to go ahead and build these solutions, but you're able to get something done quickly. We did this with an energy company that I was working with last year, and it was so successful that next thing you know, we were being brought into a meeting with the CEO and all of the senior vice presidents to show them what we had done through this training curriculum. And that is like a huge enabler, because at that point, it's no longer like, oh, this is too hard. Oh, this will take too long. Oh, this will be too expensive. Using trials, you can go ahead and demonstrate this content quite quickly. So with that, I'm at time. I want to be respectful of everyone else's session, but really appreciate you folks hanging out with me this morning. Feel free to reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn. Happy to connect with you there. And Mohammed, really appreciate you done a great job of moderating this. And yeah, like my YouTube channel has a lot of this content that I've been referring to throughout the day as well. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day.